Let's talk about being a gun tech. The questions we'll get is, you know, I want to become a gun tech. How do I become a gun tech? And, you know, it's something you don't really want to aspire to be, because you're not going to get paid doing it. That's the first thing. Okay, you can go to any of the major events and, you know, go and see like Walter and Jerry from Planet Eclipse, and go see, you know, Bjorn and you know, over with the Bob Long tent, and, you know, see some of the other guys like Rocky and the other dye techs and stuff like that. You know, if you ever go to the events, you're going to see these guys working on guns all day long. You know, do you ever see them really getting paid? No, not really. So, you know, it's a job that basically I've always kind of liked doing it, just because it allows me to give back a little bit into paintball. I've always kind of felt like if I could just help out a little bit and get 2 or 3 players out on the field playing instead of sitting in the pits, you know, working on their guns, it could help them get back out there on the field. And so one of the main reasons why I started TechBee was to try to kind of share some of the knowledge that people have given to me throughout the years of playing paintball. But the question we get a lot is, how do I become a gun tech? And you know, is there any sort of certification classes? Back many years ago, they used to have kind of a general gunsmith type class that you could take, but they don't really have that anymore. I don't know if it's maybe just the liability of getting getting access to machining equipment has kind of dried up or something like that. But nowadays, the way how I would probably suggest starting out on being a more, you know, being a gun tech or being a more knowledgeable paintball player is, one, start with your own gear first. Okay, you got to understand that in order for somebody to hand over their paintball marker to you, they got to make sure that yours is working great. So, you know, if every time you come off the field, they hear your gun, you know, your eyes getting shut off, and you're sitting there constantly changing your battery and cleaning paint out of your gun, and you're, you know, chopping paint and breaking paint in your barrel, and your loader's all filled with paint, they definitely don't want, you know, their gun to look like yours. So part of the trust that I had even way before I had TechBee was my guns always shot great. Okay, they always shot great, and people wanted their guns to shoot like my guns. And so that was part of the reason, part of the motivation people had to trust their markers to me. And the first thing I would say to start off with is at least just have a decent toolkit. Okay, that's going to be your number one thing. At least just have a basic toolkit with some of the needed things that you need to make sure that your marker is running perfectly out there on the field. You know, a good set of Allen keys, a complete set of Allen keys. And if you want to look like a true stud, get the ball socket ones. They're a little more expensive, but you're less likely to strip screws, especially when you're pulling off grip frames and stuff like that. Second thing you need, like blue Loctite. I mean, I hardly ever use Teflon tape. It's something that I just don't like using. I think it looks terrible on the gun, and I find that blue Loctite tends to seal even better, and it works great. So I always recommend using blue Loctite. I mean, I've seen some guns with so much Teflon tape, they look like a mummy. They're just wrapped up everywhere, and it's all dangling and stringing and stuff like that. So blue Loctite, you can get this from Home Depot. Go into the paint section, and you can pick this up. I think it's about $3-4 a tube, and it just seals great. It works great, and not only can you use it for fittings, you can also use it on set screws and stuff like that to prevent them from backing out. So you get 2 uses out of blue Loctite, you know, and I definitely recommend blue Loctite over Teflon tape. Stop using Teflon tape if you want to be a respectable gun tech in your area and stuff like that. Something else I also recommend getting is a couple of really small precision screwdrivers. There's a lot of people that have, or a lot of boards that are held in place by very small screws, you know, die boards, dangerous power boards, and stuff like that. And by having a nice screwdriver set, precision screwdriver set is going to be really helpful. I find that there's this one little set here, I think it's made by Stanley, and allows you to swap the ends from flathead, and it's got, you know, really nice precision points and stuff like that. You're going to see, like, especially a lot of guns like, you know, Dangerous Power G3 and you know, some of the other guns, or you know, even sometimes with die guns, even Planet Eclipse guns, sometimes, you know, the board is just feeling weird. It's you know, all over the place, and you find out that the screws have simply backed out. You can't take a number 2 you know, Phillips head and try to screw down these little tiny jewelry, you know, eyeglass type screws. So having a really nice set of having a really nice precision set of screwdrivers, especially Phillips head, is going to really come in handy on fixing a lot of guns when you're out there on the field. Another thing I recommend is a pair of very small needle nose pliers. These really come in handy on pulling pistons out, pulling springs out, especially out of regulators and stuff like that. Sometimes you get that spring or your piston is all the way down in there. You don't want to use like a pair of needle nose pliers for like an automotive, you know, for like a car. You want to use a pair of very small needle nose pliers. I think I picked these up from Sears. I don't know, maybe like $5 or something like that 10 years ago, and I've fixed a ton of guns with these things. Let's talk about lubes really quick. People, there are lube fanatics on the internet, okay, especially in the forums. They freak out, okay? They think that because you use 33 instead of 55 that your gun's gonna explode, okay? We're only talking about the O-ring, okay? And you know, O-rings now, you can get tons of O-rings for dirt cheap. Look at that. Do we really care, you know, over the course of time, what happens to one or two O-rings, this, that, and the other? I've had, you know, 10 years ago, everybody swore up and down that the gun lube was the way to go. They've got this new, you know, industry-specific gun lube, and that's the way to go. And I mean, I put that in my auto mags, and 5 years later, my O-rings are falling apart. O-rings nowadays, especially kits like these from O-Ring Monkey, you know, you can get almost every single popular O-ring size out there. 20, 30 bucks for thousands of O-rings, okay? It really doesn't matter what type of lube that you're using except for an industry-specific lube. Now, there are going to be some lubes that, you know, that have a specific purpose. The way how I use lubes is very simple. Start with the thinnest stuff first and keep going up until the gun seals, okay? There are some guns that you can use like Planet Eclipse gun oil, silicone gun oil. Works great on Egos. You know, that's probably the thinnest stuff that I would recommend. You know, you put that in the gun. If it doesn't seal with that, move on to something a little bit thicker like Hater Sauce. If that doesn't work, maybe move on to something like Slick Honey or Lurker Lube. If that doesn't work, move up to 33. If that doesn't work, move up to Dow 55, which is probably the ultimate gun sealing lube. But it also swells the O-rings a little bit, and for some spool valve guns, it can cause bolt drag. But you know, you definitely want to have a little bit of an assortment of lube, and it's really just going to come down to what works in the gun. You may have a brand new die NT that the O-rings are brand new, and you could probably get away using Planet Eclipse gun oil in the die NT, okay? You may have a Planet Eclipse Ego, maybe like an 07 Ego or something like that you're working on, and you'll have leaks inside the gun because it's blowing past the rammer O-rings, and you may have to use Dow 55 because the O-rings are so beat up, you know, and if you don't have the replacement kit there, you're going to have to go there. So the application, in my opinion, or the task that you're trying to do dictates what kind of lube you're going to use. That's how it always works for me. I kind of shut my ears off. The manufacturer recommends this, that, okay, but we're only talking about O-rings, okay? You can get a million of these, so, and you can't really screw up. So I always try to start with the thinnest lube possible, regardless if I'm working on a poppet or a spool, and I work my way up. If I put in Planet Eclipse gun oil and it leaks, okay, I maybe have to go up a little bit thicker, maybe to some Hater Sauce, or maybe get up into some Lurker Lube or some Slick Honey or something like that. So that's how Mike's evolution of lube works. I typically try to use the thinnest lube possible to get the O-rings to seal. If I'm working on a really old gun and it's just beat up and I don't have the O-rings to replace it, I'll go up to like a 33 or a 55. But honestly, you know, as you start repairing guns, you're really going to start to get a feel for what lubes work best in what situations. Now, you know, I've seen some, you know, some die guns that I didn't have the, you know, the O-rings to replace them, and you know, air was leaking past the bolt sail O-ring so bad that I didn't, you know, I tried 33, it didn't work, I had to go to 55. So, you know, if the O-ring is that damaged or that nicked up or that roughed up or the gun's been that neglected and you're there trying to fix it, sometimes going against the grain and using 55 in a spool valve gun may be what you need to get that person out there on the field. You should definitely recommend them to buy a rebuild kit so they don't have that problem later on. But O-rings, you know, O-rings are going to wear out, and it really doesn't matter what type of lube you do. The lube basically is for the application. So the next thing I'm going to recommend is, you know, I don't recommend fixing guns at the field if at all possible. One, you only have a couple hours that you're going to be out there at the field. Now, if you actually show up to the field to fix guns, this is different. But if you're showing up there to play, it's very easy for you. You know, you've only got a small window to play. For here in Florida, it's like from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and everybody takes, you know, 30-minute break for lunch. So you've got 4 hours to play paintball, and that's it. Now, if you take 2.5 hours of that, and you're repairing guns, well, it only leaves you a little bit of time at the end or at the beginning to actually play. So, and if you've paid entry money, well, that's money out of your pocket. They're not going to tip you for fixing the gun. So you really have to, you know, you're out there to play if you're out there to play. So I recommend, if at all possible, fixing the guns at your house. There's a lot of advantages to fixing markers at your house as opposed to at the field if possible. One, you got access to the internet for help forums and stuff like that. Two, you've got access to the internet to get the manual because I guarantee the person won't have it. And three, you're in a nice sterile environment where if you drop an O-ring or something falls on the ground, let's say you're working on something, the O-ring falls on the ground, you know, you can quickly reach down and pick it up. Okay, here's the O-ring, you know, or if you lose a set screw. Something else I recommend is getting a chronograph. This is right now, this chronograph that's on the market, this Radar chronograph is a lifesaver, okay? You'll be able to diagnose so many problems with a paintball marker with a chronograph. So, and one of the best things about this is it's not like before you had to keep pushing the button after every time you shoot it. You can mount this to a tripod. So you go to Walmart, you get yourself a cheap $20 tripod, you mount this to the tripod, you set this up in your backyard, or if you've got a safe place, you know, a nice field or a forest that you can go to where you can shoot into the forest safely, you can set it up on that and you can diagnose a lot of problems. At the field, I also recommend carrying some extra swabs. A lot of people are going to come in, my gun's chopping, my bolt's chopping, my loader's chopping, whatever they're going to tell you, and you're going to look inside and the gun's just going to be absolutely filthy. So having a couple extra swabs, bomb swabs, red swabs, Dymex, everybody's making swabs nowadays. Definitely want to have those. And you also want to have a jerk squeegee. You probably want to try to use this first. When you pull it through the marker, you're going to want to try to use this first before the swab. Once you use these once, you pretty much can't use them again because they're all coated with paint. But at least if you can get this through it first, you might be able to get another use or two out of your jerk swab. Extra batteries, oh my God. I've probably spent hundreds if not thousands of dollars replacing batteries on my team. I don't think I've ever gotten paid back for one of them. So batteries is one of the main things. I mean, if you have a gun that's just not behaving, okay, it's firing on every third trigger pull, the eyes are sometimes picking up, sometimes they're not. Even though the battery may be brand new, they claim it's brand new, you just never know. A lot of times, you know, you replace the battery, it fixes a lot of these electronic quirky things happening, like the gun not firing or the eyes not reading the balls and stuff like that. It's, you know, or if the gun's constantly going into bypass mode where the rate of fire drops to like 8 balls per second, you know, you replace the battery, that's going to take care of a lot of problems. Another thing, loaders. A lot of, you know, you'll get a lot of players that come off the field, you know, my gun's chopping, I don't understand why my gun's chopping, and you'll take a look at their loader settings, and their loader settings are set for 60 balls per second when you're only shooting 12 and a half. So being able to know how to change the settings on the loader is going to be a major thing. I had one teammate one time who swore up and down that his loader had to be on the maximum speed in order for him to shoot perfectly at 12 and a half balls per second. So I told him, okay, let me see if I can just swap out your detents. And I actually changed his loader speed without him knowing it, and told him I changed his detents. I set it on, I think if you had a prophecy, he had it on like 6, and I put it on like 2, and he had all the magnets in there to get the max tension. It was just blowing past his detents, and I set it on the speed of 2, told him that I changed his detents, didn't touch anything inside his gun shot great, and he thanked me. So I mean, being a gun tech, it's fun, but you know, you really need to understand that there's a lot of commitment to time, and you're going to spend a lot of money on tools and parts and stuff like that. And also, when you're putting your hands on someone else's marker, you know, I've been at the field and I've tried to work on people's markers, and I've lost set screws. I've lost little individual parts. I mean, one time I was trying to fix a guy's ego, and the little, you know, the oops ASA, the insert thing, the little star shot out and went into the sand somewhere, and we could not find it. I've tried to work on guns where I've lost set screws and, you know, little things, little parts falling. I've lost detent springs that have, you know, rolled off the picnic table and went into the sand. Okay, now everybody's staring at you, expecting you to fix it. But, you know, this is why if you're going to repair a gun, I definitely recommend you doing it at your house. I've probably broken just as many guns as I've tried to repair when I was trying, you know, when I was first, you know, really trying to help people out with their markers. But in the end, it definitely is a job where you feel good about what you're doing. You definitely are helping the sport when you take the time out to try to help somebody. Even though you may not be able to help, at least you try to help, you know, you try to give a lending hand. But it's something that you just kind of want to ease into. But once you get known as a gun tech, it's very hard to go out there and play, because people are going to be handing you their markers left and right and expecting you to perform a miracle. But, you know, with that being said, there's also a lot of people that just don't take care of their stuff at all. And, you know, they beat it up, they run their stuff into the ground. It's absolutely filthy. I had this the other day with a teammate. I had an NT that was just, I just wanted to shake my head when I looked at it. It was just absolutely wrecked on the inside. I mean, you can tell it had been shot through the grip frames. I mean, the spring was rusting. Everything was just absolutely corroded. The gun was just absolutely neglected. And, you know, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. If it's not important to the player to take care of his own stuff, it's not important to me to fix it. So unless he's paying me 60 bucks an hour to repair it, like like if he sent it back to the factory. So, and I'll probably also sum up with saying that don't waste too much time trying to repair a gun. If you get a marker in and it's got 1,000 aftermarket parts on it, especially like some of the project ions and stuff like that, and nothing seems to be working, you're trying to replace O-rings, don't hesitate to ship it back to the factory, okay? They know what they're doing. They've seen every marker. They've got all the repair parts. They can pull all the stuff, aftermarket stuff out of it, put all the stock stuff back into it, which many times fixes the problem. And there's no shame in having to send it back to the factory. But you got to understand, they're not going to compensate you for your time. So, you know, spend an hour, try to figure out what it is. And if you can't figure it out, there's no shame in putting it in a box and shipping it to the manufacturer. They'll fix it before they send it back to you. And if it comes back and still doesn't work, ship it back to them again. So it's, you know, not everybody gets it 100% right on the first try. So that's probably the show I can tell you about being a gun tech. You know, it's one of those things you just got to be really careful about doing it, because before you know it, you're gonna have more markers than you could ever know how to fix. You're gonna spend hours and hours and, you know, tons of money out of your own pocket trying to repair markers, and you'll be lucky to get a thank you. You'll be lucky to get a $5 tip. Thanks for tuning in.